Hello YouTube, my name is Joseph. I'll be taking you through Virtualbox tutorial on how to create a virtual machine with your Virtualbox. Virtualbox is an environment that allows you to test other operating systems on your host operating system. As we see here, I have my operating system here. If I want to install other operating systems, I will have to get a bootable drive or maybe a CD, insert it into my machine, create some partition on my primary hard disk, and then install the other operating system, as we usually call it dual booting. If I want to dual boot maybe Windows with a Linux operating system, I can just set it up that way. And for that one, anytime I want to change from Windows to, let's say, Linux, I'll have to restart the machine, restart it, and then boot into the other operating system. That works very well. It allows you to get full access to your hardware resources, the RAM, the processor speed, and everything. You get full access when you are running one operating system. But there are cases where you just want to test some operating system live without really getting into the nitty-gritties of installing it on your hard disk. Maybe you're out of hard disk space, you can't partition, and you don't want to use an external, but you need to install and test an operating system for some purposes. That's when Virtualbox comes in. It allows you to run as many operating systems as your RAM can support on your existing operating system. So if you are already on Windows, you get to run other operating systems on top of the Windows without restarting. That makes it very easy and very convenient to work with. And the best part is you can install more than one operating system. You can install as many operating systems as you want on your machine. So to get started, let's see how you will download Virtualbox. I won't be going through the installation here. Let me just quickly point out how you can download the Virtualbox, and then we'll see. So you can quickly download Google Virtualbox download, and Virtualbox download. And Google should give you a nice thing. So the link we are interested in is right. So you can proceed to downloads at Oracle virtualbox.org/wiki/downloads, and then grab your copy of the latest Virtualbox and install them. We can proceed from there. Alright, so when you get to the website, as I've explained in the other video on the Virtualbox download, which I will leave the link below, you choose your platform. Then you also make sure you download the extension pack. I have another video which covers that part, so you can follow that one and then see. Alright, so now that you have your Virtualbox downloaded and installed, you can pop it up as I have here, and then we can go through how to set up a virtual machine using Virtualbox. So this is a Virtualbox interface. When you launch Virtualbox after setting up your extension pack and everything, this is the interface you will see. It will be a bit cleaner than mine. You have this place being empty, you have the new icon, the settings icon, and then the start icon. Alright, so when you look on the left panel here, this is where the virtual machines that you have created are stored. And then whenever you select a virtual machine, the information about the virtual machine will appear on the right dropper here. So for this particular virtual machine, you can see that it has a name, the operating system, the memory, the number of processors here, and a bunch of other stuff that we can see and configure here. Alright, so let's first set up our own virtual machine, and then we will see how we can set it up very well and then proceed to install our operating system. One thing you have to bear in mind is that when you're using Virtualbox or any kind of virtualization software, what you are going to do is to create computers. You are going to create virtual computers on top of this your physical computer. So this is the physical computer, the physical environment that we also call the host computer. And our job here is to install or create virtual computers on top of the physical computer. So you have your physical computer here, your environment here, known as the host computer, and we are going to create a virtual computer on top of this physical computer. It's going to use the resources of the physical computer, but it's going to be completely separate and different from the physical computer. And this virtual computer that we are going to create is what we call the guest computer, or the guest operating system, or the guest machine. So all the ones you see here are guest machines that are installed on top of my physical computer. So you'll be setting up a guest machine very shortly. Okay, so to set up your machine or your virtual machine or your guest, you click on the new icon here. As you can see, there's a new button here. Just click on it and it will pop up the setup process. The first part of the setup here is to give your virtual machine or your new computer that you are creating a name. As you can see from the left panel here, I've created several computers, and each one of them has a unique name. The name is just for your own identification. You can choose anything that you want. It doesn't affect or change anything. So let's say I'm planning to install some form of Windows, so I'll call it WinOS, or to be specific, maybe I'm going for Windows 10, so I can just say Windows 10 something. The name should be up to you. Okay, then you come to the type. So under the type, this is where you select the type of operating system or the platform that you're going to use. Mostly you'll be working with Windows or Linux or probably Mac, depending on what operating system that you want to install on your virtual computer. So here I'm going to install Windows 10 on my virtual computer that I'm creating. So I'll select Windows under the type here, and under the version here you get a list of almost all the Windows operating systems that have come and gone. So I'm interested in Windows 10. My ISO, the Windows 10 that I'll be installing is 64-bit, so I'll choose 64-bit. If you have 32-bit, make sure you go for the 32-bit version. So I pick up 64-bit here, then I click on the next to continue. Alright, so here we've chosen the name and then the operating system and its version that we'll be installing. So we click on next, and then we get to the next screen here. Here we are interested in the memory size. Remember, once again, we are creating a computer, and what are some of the things a computer requires? RAM, hard disk, operating system. Those are the basic things that a computer requires, and of course the processor and other stuff. So at this step we are going to set up the RAM that we are going to give to the computer. Usually Virtualbox will try to recommend some RAM for you. As you can see here, it is recommending 2 gig for me for this operating system that I'm going to install. But bear in mind that how much RAM you will be able to assign to your virtual machine, how much RAM will be assigned to your virtual machine depends on the amount of physical RAM that you have on this physical machine here. Okay, so if your physical RAM is 2 gig, you'll be able to assign less than 2 gig to your virtual machine. If you have 4 gig, you'll be able to assign less than 4 gig to your virtual machine. In my case here, I have 8 gig of physical RAM installed in my computer here. So for my virtual machine, I have up to 8 gig here to use on my virtual machine. But remember, it's not advisable to use more than half of your physical RAM in one virtual machine. Usually I advise people to go for a quarter, between a quarter and then half. You do not exceed half of your physical RAM. Again, when you look at Virtualbox, you see that below this bar here there is this green line. It starts with green, goes to some form of orange warning sign, then it gets to red. This is showing you how much RAM you can assign to your virtual machine. So by dragging this slider here, you see that you can change the amount of RAM you can assign to this computer that you are creating. But bear in mind that you do not slide beyond the green part here. So here the maximum I can hit here is about 5 gig. Do not go beyond the 5 gig, else your physical computer here, your host, will not be able to function to support your virtual machine. So I'll be setting it to 2 gig here for a start. Also bear in mind that usually when you're setting up, because you'll be installing the operating system, the installation process requires a lot of RAM. So for the start you can choose something bigger, and then after you have done the installation of your operating system, you can reduce it. We will see that one later. Okay, so I'm leaving that at the recommended memory size, which is 2 gig, which also is a quarter of my total RAM here. Then I'm going to click next. In the next part here, now I'm about to set up my hard disk. That's the hard disk that I will install the operating system on. So here I'll choose create a virtual hard drive now to create a new hard disk. I'll hit next, and then I'll have to select the type of virtual hard disk file that I'm creating. Remember, you are installing your operating system on another computer. The hard disk you are creating is virtual, it is not real, so it is actually stored as a file, and the file has an extension. These different types are just the different file extensions that can be used, and they all come from different software like Virtualbox. So the very first one is the Virtualbox extension VDI. We have all the other types. You can choose any one of them. They usually work cross-platform, but you have to, in this case, stick with either VDI or VHD. Any of those will work, but here you are free to choose any one of them. So let's go with VHD. I usually like VHD. We hit next, and then it will ask us how you should create this hard disk. In the next step, we are going to set the size of the hard disk that we are creating, maybe 30 gig, 50 gig, 100 gig, 1 terabyte, depending on what we want. Now when we create a hard disk of, let's say, 1 terabyte, the 1 terabyte takes some physical space on our machine. The physical space that this 1 terabyte will take on our machine is usually smaller than the actual hard disk space that we use. Here it is asking us, do we want to pick the total 1 terabyte that we will be creating? Let's say our virtual machine will be creating it for about 30 gig. Do we want to take 30 gig out of our physical hard drive and store it somewhere, or we want to be picking part of it as and when we copy things onto our virtual drive? So here we are going to leave it at dynamically allocated, which means that anytime we copy something onto our virtual machine, just take some part of the physical hard disk and store it on it instead of using the fixed size. Let's leave it at dynamic so that we can have enough space on our machine. Alright, so now this is the step where we set the size of the virtual hard disk that we are creating. You can go up to 2 terabytes, but it's not advisable. Just hit somewhere 40 gig, 30 gig, depending on the operating system you are installing. Normally you won't go beyond 100 gig unless you're going to use it for some high storage stuff. Okay, so let's leave it at 40 gig here and then create. Right, so that's it. We have our virtual machine set up nicely. As we can see here, this is the name win_10. It has been created nicely for us. The next part is to install our operating system, go through a few settings, and then we can start using our virtual machine. So in the next part of the tutorial, we'll be looking at how we can configure this even further, how we can make certain changes. If you look here, you can see 64-bit Windows, 2 gig RAM, and a few other settings that we didn't actually set. We will see how we can modify all of them and then install our Windows operating system in the next tutorial. Do not go away. You can find a link to the next tutorial in the bottom, and also don't forget to subscribe. Thank you, and see you soon.